Peace, love, and prosperity to all of humanity on planet Earth. This is Abdul Smith Bey, wise of AMPAG, and we will be finishing up the French Protectorate of 1913, the discussion between France and the United States. Let me pull it up as I continue to share the screen. There we are. So as we discussed last week, after the Act of Algeciras, the Treaty of Fez, which was in 1912, the following year, in 1913, Republic corresponded with the United States dealing with the protections of the empire, as well as the Moors in Morocco, part of which dealt with the United States having to pay taxes. So the French Republic was trying to force the United States to pay taxes. And by the way, it wasn't limited to the United States. It was, they went around all of Morocco, engaging all the powers, all the European powers in Morocco. Because the Treaty of Fez gave, the Sultan gave the power to govern the empire to France on behalf of the Sultan, because the Sultan was losing his power based on the loans that he took from Great Britain and Spain. It put the empire under in a subjugated status, if you will, as debtors to Spain and Great Britain. This is why they brought in France to assist in that matter. And the other reason why they brought in France was because the Moors were acquiescing. We were supposed to institute specific reforms based on the Act of Algeciras of 1906. All the power was given back to the Moors in 1906 through the Act of Algeciras. Let's go to the Act of Algeciras so we can identify the power that was given back. Got two versions pulled up. Okay, we'll go with this version. So we'll go up to the preamble, just so we could identify and recall and summarize the authority that was given back to the Moors. So this right here shows the different chapters. And by the way, everyone, please make sure to keep your mics on mute, so we don't have any sound issues. So chapter 1 was a declaration relative to the organization of the police. Chapter 2 was a regulation concerning
Guys, that should have been a bonus.
Somebody mute, please. As soon as I said it, somebody unmuted. That's interesting. Chapter 2, a regulation concerning the detection and repression of the contraband of arms, control of the guns. So the chapter 1 is control over the police and the military. Don't Black people deal with police brutality all the time, or so they say? And the reason why I say that is because the world is a stage. And that's another subject that we will discuss at some point, because everything that you see is not necessarily what they say it is coming on as it relates to the media. My question with all these events is, who's behind that camera? There's always somebody always got a camera. Why is there always a camera to televise things? Well, that's another story. We'll talk about that at another date. Chapter 3, an act of concession for a Moroccan state bank. That's the economic and financial system. Chapter 4, a declaration concerning a better return of taxes and the creation of new revenues. So we know that's the taxation and the creations of new revenues. So, for example, I'm gonna tell you, let's talk about what the Moors hate the most. Especially the civic Moors, right? Okay, question to the floor. What is the biggest pain point for the civic Moors that they're constantly rejecting and fighting back? Does somebody give me an answer to that? What is the biggest pain point as it relates to the American jurisdiction?
Driver's license.
Close enough. More specifically, traffic violations, traffic issues, traffic court.
Right.
Right? Okay. So the traffic court system is in Morocco. But the traffic court system is a big time revenue generating. What it says right here, the creation, let me highlight it. Right there, right? So it says, or actually, I'm trying to just, let me highlight exactly what I'm looking to highlight. It's just one thing that I'm trying to highlight, and it won't allow me to do it properly. So it says the creation of new revenues. So every time you get a license, you got to pay how much? $25 or so, right? Every time you get a tag, you got to pay for the tag. Every year you got to renew your tag. You got to renew your license every 10 years. You got to pay the tickets when you get a ticket, right? You got probation. In other words, there's so many financial outlets within the traffic court system. Is ridiculous. We did the math. Me and Jay did the math on that. It was in the billions. You know, just for the so-called state of Georgia. If you got 5 million, the math was something like, if you have, let's say 5 million people and only 2 million have a license, right? And it's $25 for the driver's license every time you have to renew it. What's 25 times 2 million? These are the types of numbers that we were identifying. So for us in our subjugated status, that's a major pain point. And they're making big bank on traffic court. But remember, everything within the United States falls under the jurisdiction of Morocco, which means that traffic court does too. So now, if the tables turn and the power shifts and we end up under control of the traffic courts, where will all that revenue be going? Somebody please answer that question. Where will the traffic court revenues be going?
Morris Treasury.
Thank you. Suddenly, the Moors will love traffic court because now it's lining our pockets. See, it's all about perspective. We're just a subjugated people. This is the reason why an issue, a simple issue as traffic court is not the battle. We're going in there battling them over traffic situations. That's not the battle. IRS is not the battle. Mortgage is not the battle. None of those single issues, if you will, is the battle. So if none of those things are the battle, or is the battle, then what's the battle, Morris? Somebody give me an answer to that. What's the real battle? What's the real fight that we're undertaking here?
Restoration of the state.
Restoration of the estate, which means what? Taking back control and the governance of the empire. That's the battle. Because once we take back control of the empire, we solve all those pain points all at once, don't we? So not only do we solve those pain points, but the tables turn. Now we're the ones in control of traffic court. We're the ones in control of the IRS. We're the ones that's in control of the banking system, the mortgage.
We can't hear you. Dropped off.
Okay, I'm here. All right. Can y'all hear me?
You clear now, brother.
Can you hear me? You hear me now?
Clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Every single time it doesn't, I try to work from my phone, but then my phone always have a tendency to kick me out of Zoom. That's why I keep the computer up. Plus I need the computer for the reference points. Anyway, back to the point. They deal with these pain points as well. They deal with mortgage fraud. Everything that we deal with, they're dealing with. right? The average American. So when we take back control of the empire, we take back control of all those systems, we take back control of all the creations of new revenues, suddenly Moors will suddenly be all good with traffic court, because they'll see the type of finance that will be coming into the Moorish treasury. It's just that simple. It's a matter of trading places. They traded places with us. We got to trade places back. How did they do it? With the pen. So the Naturalization Act was a legislative act that would have to be reversed by Moroccan legislation, right? So you naturalize us, we come out of naturalization by doing what? Enacting constitutions and declarations of independence. And then now we take back control of our self-governance. We take back control of our lives. We take back control of our empire. We take back control of our culture. We take back control of our identity. Right? No one can, now we can put forth legislation that says, if you call us out of our name, i.e. Black, Negro, colored, you go into jail. Or you'll have to deal with fines, penalties, and confiscations. Who does that? The Jews. What is the name of their legislation? Anti-Defamation League. Right? But we're gonna have our own Anti-Defamation League. It's called Moroccan law. And you ain't calling us Blacks, Negroes, colors, or even Moorish Americans. That's going away. By the way, Moors, I got some news for you all. Today marks an important day for all of humanity, for Morocco, for even Black people. The Wazir Regional Council Convention is now in full force. We had an inauguration today. Everyone has been inaugurated as a public inauguration into office. That was me as the chairman of the WRC, the Wazir for New Mecca as council member, the Wazir Akil for Meru State Republic as council member, the Wazir from AMPAG, DeAndre Dre Bay as council member, or should I say co-chairman. So I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. So DeAndre Dre Bay is the vice chairman. Amir Hassan Il for New Mecca is the co-chairman. Akil Bay for Meru State Republic is a co-chairman. Those are the four original signatory powers, which were actually the actual negotiating states, the states that came together to negotiate the convention. After that came in, Dimty from Texas have acceded to the convention and became contracting states. And so the Wazir of Dimty is now the council member of the WRC, and AMPAM, Alodia Moroccan Pereira Monte, Michigan, the Wazir Mia Morbe, she's also a council member of the WRC. Sister Nova Iluel of AMPAC, she's the executive staff member. She's the executive director, actually, because now we're talking about the executive staff. And a good brother Marcus, who came online, he's the inspector general. He's very high. He's highly qualified for the position, and he's the inspector general. And so currently, the inauguration video is being edited by the good brother Jazz Walker Ale, which is AMPAC National. He's cleaning the video up. Soon enough, it will be uploaded on the WRC's social media platforms, as well as AMPAG Media and all other social media accounts and platforms that we can all potentially share it with. So what I'll do is I'll put it in the Telegram so that all of you can take it and share it. Please do so, because the world we need to promulgate it. We need to promote it. The world needs to know that the WRC is now in full force. So it's no longer a thing of talking. The action has been taken, and it's now in full force. And we're now getting ready to start setting forth resolutions, so that the states, the respective states, can now come in and pull those resolutions from the WRC and convert it into legislation for their respective states. And then we're going to start enforcing these laws upon American citizens and Moorish subjects in Morocco. So I just wanted to let you guys know that the WRC is in full effect. And I believe on the next class, we'll go into more details about the WRC. If anyone has any questions, we can ask those questions then, okay? Islam. Back to my point. So Chapter 4 is the declaration concerning return of taxes and revenues, right? Chapter 5 is dealing with is a regulation concerning the customs of the empire, repression. Let me get this this bar out of my way. Okay. So it says a regulation concerning the customs of the empire and the repression of fraud and smuggling. So that deals with controlling the ports. And then chapter 6 deals with a declaration relative to police services and public services and public works. That deals with the, you know, that's your police department, your fire department, your 911, your government bodies, government bodies. It also deals with the roads, the railways, the highways, basically the entire empire. So the Sultan thought proper in 1906 to give it all back to the Moors. But then when you go back and you look at which article is it? Let's see. So Article 1, Article 2.
Okay, what you said? What now?
Somebody need to be on mic, please. I mean on mute, please. Sorry. Zap them. Okay. Is Article 4. So Article 4 says that these officers and non-commissioned officers for a period of 5 years to date from the ratification of the Act of the Conference shall give their service to the organization of a body of Sharifian police. Layman's term, the interpretation of that paragraph, they were supposed to train us for 5 years. They were supposed to wake up the Moors and train the Moors. They failed to do so. They never did it. Right? So we continued our acquiescence. So then 6 years later, they petitioned the assistance of France through the Treaty of Fez. And this is where the right of protection, the French Protectorate was established in Morocco, because the Moors wasn't available to maintain the peace and security in Morocco, as well as to institute the reforms. Okay, let's go up to the preamble. So it says here in the preamble, let me go further up. Where is the preamble? It feels like it's everything is jumbled up with this document, but it's not. Okay, right here we are, right here. Inspired by the interest attaching itself to the reign of order, peace, and prosperity in Morocco, and recognizing that the attainment thereof can only be effected by means of the introduction of reforms. That was our job. We were to introduce reforms based upon what? The triple principle of the sovereignty and independence of His Majesty the Sultan, the integrity of his domains, and economic liberty without any inequality. Okay, so we were supposed to introduce these reforms as the Sharifian authorities of Morocco. We didn't do so. Okay, so then we come here. And we went over this. It's okay to go over it again. Article 1, this is the Treaty of Fez, 1912. The government of the French Republic and His Majesty the Sultan have agreed to establish in Morocco a new regime comprising the administrative, judicial, educational, economic, financial, and military reforms that the Moors didn't do in 1906 when they were commanded to do so. Y'all see the point? Tell me yes, tell me no. If there's any questions or answers. What was that?
Islam.
Islam.
I'm following along.
Following along, Islam. Okay. So that brings us back over here. So let's come over. I just wanted to give it a give everyone the backstory. Law and history goes together, right? All right. So now we'll begin to read. I'll begin to read for the French Protectorate. So we ended here with J.B. Moore. Somebody please mute your mics. With J.B. Moore, the long read with J.B. Moore, who was the Secretary of State of the United States, talking to France. Now France is coming back, the French ambassador to the Secretary of State, coming from the French embassy. Hold on one second. Let me I had to restart my phone, unfortunately. I like to talk from my phone instead of the computer. I just use the computer for the reference points. So here I am, I'm coming in. So, okay, so the French embassy was in Washington, April 22nd of 1914. Remember, it all started in 1913. So to this point.
Recording in progress.
So at this point, let me mute this here. Okay. So to this point, it's been a year now that they've been going back and forth with this conversation about the Moors here in Morocco. And so we'll take off from where we left off. We'll go from where we left off last week or week before last. And it goes, Mr. Secretary of State, referring to the oral communications by which I made known to the Department of State the views of my government in respect to the remarks maintained in Your Excellency's note of February 13. I have the honor, in compliance with instructions I have received, to remind you of the high value we should attach to the United States government's relinquishing together with its consular courts, its extraterritorial privileges in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. You see, he's trying to tell them France told them in 1914 to relinquish the extraterritorial jurisdiction, right? Your Excellency's note above mentioned held out the prospect that the United States would accede to our request and record its accession, right, in due and proper form. So what he's talking about, the constitutional processes going through Congress as a bill, so that then the president can sign it into law as law. This is what he's referring to. This when Prophet Noble Ali said, change the literature, you change the people. Jay likes to say, change the vernacular, you change the people. This is what we're talking about. It's knowing these terms. We know, let's see, we know legalese, right? What is a legalese term that we know? We know things like, okay, let's say a lower degree of law literature or law vernacular, let's say. So the high level word for promotion is promulgation, right? The low level for it would be promotion, or even, let's say, put them on notice. So the Moors would say, well, we got to put 7 locations on notice, right? But as statesmen and diplomats, we don't use the term put them on notice. We use the term promulgation, right? We use terms like accede and accessions. Full powers as found in good and due form. What does that mean? How do you establish full powers, and how is it found in good and due form? Excuse me. These are the things that we've got to make part of our vocabulary. In order to make it a part of your vocabulary, you got to make it a part of your consciousness. The only way to make it a part of your consciousness is to do what Prophet Noble Ali said to do, which is study, study, study. And study some more. But so when he says study, study, what are you studying? Are you studying legislation, or are you studying literature? Are you studying David McRitchie and J.A. Rogers, who literally call you a Negro in these books, even though it's giving you the credit for being who you are, but they don't call you nothing else but Negroes? Okay, you got Ivan Van Sertima that has, the golden age of the Moors, but they don't speak of it from the perspective of Moroccan Moors, just Moors in general. Whereas legislation tell you specifically who's who and who's not. So what we should have been studying is legislation, more importantly, international law and our Moorish treaties. That's what we should have been studying. Not just mere literature, Webster's Dictionary of 1828. And if we do study laws, we deal with municipal laws. And if you look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary, municipal laws is a contradiction to international law. So let me get this straight. The prophet was dealing with international matters. He brought back an international flag. He brought back the Fez, which is an international headdress. It's not a national headdress, it's an international headdress. Notice that nobody else wears the Fez on planet Earth. There is no dignitary on planet Earth that wears the Fez. Because the ones who's supposed to be wearing the Fez they're sleeping. They're the ones who wear the Fez. That's us, the Moroccan Moors. So he brought us an international demonstration. Moors are an international people. We're not. We're international. We are of the world. The Sharifian Empire is a global empire. Okay, so if we know this to be the case, then why are we limiting ourselves to their laws? Should we not be studying international law? We've been blocked. We've been sold out by our own in fezzes and turbans and without fezzes and turbans. Moorish American teachers, leaders, and preachers, as well as Negro American leaders, teachers, and preachers have sold us out. I'm not gonna get off that train until these people find their day in court. They will be dealt with. And me as the chairman of the WRC, I will ensure that it happens, period. That's my word, Farrakhan. Anyway, so Your Excellency's note above mentioned held out the prospect that the United States would accede to our request and record its accessions in due and proper form, but pointed out a certain number of topics as to which favorable assurances were requested, right? So there was requesting some assurances before the United States. There was like, okay, hold on. If y'all remember the read in the previous class, the United States was saying, well, you know, we have treaty rights to hold on to these Moors and we want to maintain certain rights. We can't just, you know, can we talk about this, right? They were trying to negotiate something because they recognized that France had all the power and authority over the United States. So if France, right, who was inaugurated, who was given the power, was not by consanguinity. If France had all the authority over the United States, then what kind of authority do you think that Moors have over the United States? Because our authority is based on consanguinity, given to us by God, not by a sultan. It's a big difference. That's why today the French don't have that authority, because it was just given to them. Not even given to them, it was given to them on a limited basis. So the sultan, the later sultan of 1956, felt compelled to get away from the French Protectorate and enacted a constitution and the Declaration of Independence, right? To get away from the treaty obligations, to get away from the authority of the French authority over them, based on what the Sultan of 1912 enacted through the Treaty of Fez. This is what caused the Treaty of Fez to be dissolved, because the Sultan said, okay, we'll just establish a modern state called the Kingdom of Morocco in Morocco. That way now we no longer would have to fall under the authority of France. So France, because the treaty was dissolved, France basically lost the power. The Sultan became a king and the kingdom and established the Kingdom of Morocco. So now they're independent from the French Protectorate. But then who took over control of the empire and the protections of the empire? The United States, by default. So now they picked up the pen. They rocking with the pen. And this is their fear. They don't want to let go of the pen. They don't want to lose that pen, but it's inevitable because the Moors are coming, and y'all already knew the Moors were coming. It's like what Tupac said. What did he say? The rose that grew from concrete. That's us. And currently, right now, we're busting through the concrete. The rose hasn't budded yet. Oh, but you can see it growing through the concrete. With all these constitutions that's been enacted throughout all these several non-self-governing territories that's now become self-governing territories, which is our trust territories. They can't stop it. You can't stop the sun from shining. As to the matter of form, my government wishes My government wishes me to submit to Your Excellency the enclosed draft of declaration, which in it fits the situation that is to be declared, that is to be cleared. I am told that the declaration has already been signed by the Russian and Spanish governments, right? And that other adhesions are forthcoming. You see, so they already punked Russia and they already punked Spain. Now they're over here punking the United States. As to the several points mentioned in Your Excellency's note, I may, as I have already done by word of mouth, assure you that the government of the Republic is quite ready to settle in the most friendly spirit the questions of interest to the United States of look at that, I was about to say the United States of Morocco, to the United States in Morocco. Look at what they said. The United States in Morocco. United States is in Morocco. Which part of that don't we understand? So if the United States is in Morocco, and we understand that we are Moors, then how can we be Americans? The United States of America is in Morocco. They're under our protections. That's how it's supposed to be. The tables turn, but according to the Treaty of Peace, they're under our protection. The United States of America is in Morocco, and the people of the land are the Moroccans, not the Americans, or Moorish Americans, or Moroccan Americans. Let me make a point real quick on as it relates to that. Moors, I'll try to make this point pretty quickly. Moors like to bring up the fact that, well, you know, you've got French American, Korean American, Italian American, German American, whatever American. So therefore, this is why we are Moorish Americans. This is how come we have our nationality as Moorish Americans, because everybody else got a nationality as whatever American, British American, whatever. Okay, bad comparison, horrible comparison. I mean, egregious comparison. There's a difference between us too. We're comparing apples to oranges. What is the difference? For one, we're home. So if you're Italian American, you're not home. Okay, what do I mean? All right, let me clarify. An Italian decided that he wanted to acquiesce and become an American. So he approached the Americans, the American government, to be naturalized by his own consent. He told them, I want to be an American. I will acquiesce to your American laws in exchange to do business in America. Right? So then he fills out the proper written instruments, the proper paperwork to naturalize into American jurisdiction. Then he becomes an Italian American, keeping in mind that the term Italian American, in that those two words, American would be the dominant power, right? So you're an Italian under American jurisdiction, so therefore Italian American. That's their issue. That's their thing. They wanted to be an American. What more wanted to be an American? Tell me one more Black person, Negro, colored, whatever, came from somewhere else and said, okay, I want to naturalize in America. We were naturalized against our knowledge. We were naturalized against our will. It was called the Naturalization Act of 1870. So naturalization was forced upon us. Nobody here just decided that we wanted to be Americans. Legislation was set forth and it made us Americans. That's the battle. That's the difference. That's why it's apples to oranges, because we didn't consent to the American jurisdiction. We were brought into the American jurisdiction without our knowledge. That's why you're now Moorish American, because you were subjugated through legislation. That's not for us to do. We're supposed to get out of the jurisdiction of the American jurisdiction and come back to Morocco, which is called expatriation, or should I say repatriation. So when an Italian moved to America, he expatriated from Italy to become an American. Therefore, he became an Italian American, and it was all done in his own consciousness. He decided he wanted to do that. He wanted to be American. They made us American. And then they further did so with with Resolution 75, in which the Moorish American Society of Philadelphia took part in the speedy Americanization of the former Moors. That's never what we were supposed to do. Our job the whole time was to go back to Morocco, not remain naturalized. Now, if you did want to remain naturalized, you have to get consent from the government of Morocco. The same way an Italian would have to get permission from the government of Italy to become naturalized in the United States. You got to understand immigration and immigration laws, Morris. So stop bringing up Italians or Italian Americans, so therefore we're Moorish American. No, you're Moorish American because you're subjugated, and you were subjugated before against your will, which is slavery. The 14th Amendment. That's why Prophet said that the 14th Amendment is not necessary. The job is to go back home, Dorothy. I digress. As to several points mentioned in Your Excellency's note, okay, I've already discussed that part, right? Okay, so the United States is in Morocco. Among these, that of the proteges naturally ceases to be of any practical importance to the powers that agreed to recognize our new courts, the tertib tax being besides already paid by foreigners. So they're talking about, this is what we should be telling these people. Where's your tertib tax? Because Spain paid theirs, Russia pays theirs. Where's yours, United States? We're supposed to be approaching them like that. Instead, we talk about, we're singing songs talking about we shall overcome. And I have a dream and all this crap. As to the right of aliens to own real estate, has not been restricted by any Sharifian regulations. All that has been done was to take a few urgent measures having relations to strategy or prompted by the necessity of checking speculation in land in land intended for public use. The complaint of the vacuum oil company against the customs treatment accorded to its products had not been brought by the party concerned or the representative of its country to the notice of my government, which deems it its duty in this respect to recall that the treaties in force guarantee equal fiscal treatment to all the powers, and that they may be sure that nothing will be overlooked to let their nationals enjoy the full benefit of those advantages. My government indulges the hope that under the conditions I have just brought to mind, and in view of its firm intentions to examine and settle in an entirely friendly way the few questions yet unsettled in which American citizens are interested, Your Excellency will kindly coincide in the views I have just had the honor to submit to you. Your acceptance of these propositions will be particularly gratifying to the government of the Republic, which would take it as fresh evidence of the traditional friendship existing between our two countries. Be pleased to accept. This was Jusserand, whoever that is. And then they go into a declaration here. The undersigned, so that this declaration was given to the United States. The undersigned, duly authorized by their respective governments, make in common accord the following declaration. Taking into consideration the guarantees of juridical equality offered to foreigners by the French courts of the Protectorate. So this is supposed to be consular courts of Morocco. The French courts of the Protectorate, the government of the United States relinquish all claims for its consuls, persons, subjects to its jurisdiction, right? And its establishment to any right or privilege derived from the regime of the capitulations. The treaties and conventions of every nature in force between France and the United States cover, as of right, unless otherwise stipulated, the French zone in the Sharifian Empire. This declaration will go into effect 10 days after its date, done in duplicate at such and such and such. So they supplied, or they gave the United States a declaration for them to fill out saying that they'll be given a jurisdiction, right? The regime of capitulations and things of that nature. Well, it never happened. The Secretary of State for the French, to the French ambassador. So here comes the Secretary of State, right? Responding to the French ambassador. April 30th, 1914, Department of State, Washington, D.C. Excellency, I have the honor to inform Your Excellency that the department is in receipt of a telegram from the American Charge d'Affaires at Tangiers. So remember, there was a diplomatic body in Tangier, Morocco, right? And in that diplomatic body, each signatory power had a legation. So you had the French legation, German legation, you had the American legation. And the Charge d'Affaires is an ambassador. So this was an American Charge d'Affaires, while the Moroccans were asleep. You see, when you understand, when you discern and understand the history, when you're reading these documents, it's clear to you that it's two different jurisdictions. One is an American jurisdiction, the other one is the Moroccan jurisdiction. We really got to get out of this mindset of saying that we're Moorish Americans. Like, this is ridiculous. The reference points are clear. They're absolutely clear. Doesn't matter what the prophet said or didn't say. Like, he did say, stop worshiping him. How about you listen to that part? How about you stand your square on that part? When the prophet said, don't worship me, study and carry on my laws. How about we stop worshiping him? Stop saying things like, well, if the prophet didn't say it, then we shouldn't do it. Like, are you really serious here? I have all honors and respect and love for Prophet Noble Ali, but goodness gracious. It was in 1913 when he came. It's 2023 and we're still, if the prophet didn't say it, don't do it. Okay, well, it's been 100 years, which is a century, and we ain't got nowhere. And it ain't got nothing to do with what the prophet said or didn't say. It's because of the infiltration and the corruption of his works that y'all keep ignoring because you know it happened, but yet you still standing your square on what they claim he said, knowing that his works was infiltrated and the temple was split 3 ways. Colonel C. Kirkman Bey, some reincarnated guy, Givens Ale, and then the other guy, what's his name? I forget his name. Doesn't even matter to me. They're all sold out. They split the temple up 3 ways. Then you have Elijah Muhammad and Farah Muhammad. If the prophet didn't say it and we shouldn't do it, man, listen, grow up. Grow the heck up and take your seat in the affairs of men.
Islam.
Islam, brother.
I also
Islam.
like to mention the part where he said we are not to amalgamate. I think people forget about that. They're not to
about that.
I mean, amalgamate means to become one. So they basically saying we becoming one. We do not decide to amalgamate or marry into the pale skinned nations of Europe. You know, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
So that's going contrary to amalgamation, right there, trying to become one.
And you know why the reason why that is the divine warning, good brother. Because the divine warning said that the Moorish Divine and National Movement is incorporated within this government.
Right.
Say that?
No, that's why I say it's contrary. There's a lot of contradiction going on.
A lot of contradiction going on. But it seems as though the Moors are, I don't know, they gravitate to the corruption and they reject what he said. Like, you can tell when you study international law, it's clear what's corrupted and it's clear what's not corrupted. It's absolutely clear. You can tell once you start studying international law.
Right, and that's why he said you need to study, and you go take you 50 years to even understand what I brought you. So nothing was on the surface, but he brought us.
Exactly.
It's clear as day. It's just clear as day. So those who put in the work will find those treasures. Those that won't put in the work won't find the treasures. That's just that simple. You know, so we got to work toward this. Nothing is on the surface. We got to dig down deep. And that's what we got to do. We got to put in the work, brother. We got to put in work and not be like Barato Barabo because the priest said so. I mean, we got to be about what we know, and we can't be simply guessing.
That's right.
And you have a lot of them that can't even explain citizenship to you right now to this day, and they've been there respectively 20, 30 years themselves and don't even know.
Yeah, that's fine, brother.
Just waiting on the miracle. You know, the prophet said, take these lessons and save yourself, you know? He didn't
That's
say
right.
wait on me. He didn't say wait on me.
That's right.
I yield.
Islam Grand Sheikh and Mufti of AMPAG. Where's the reference point for New York Republic? Where's the reference point for California Republic? Because they keep saying, oh, no, it's not a state of, it's a republic. Okay, well, where's the reference point for that? Show me legislation that calls it that. We just make up stuff and then we turn around and parrot it. So the teachers, the Moorish American teachers make up things and then the students run around parroting it. I hear more always saying is, oh, I'm from the Florida Republic. Okay, well, where's the reference point that show and prove that that's what that is? Because it's not that, I've never seen it. Show me, please. It's the state of Florida. It ain't no Florida Republic. What it needs to be is you reclaiming that territory. And whatever name you apply to it, that's what it is. You're not of the Republic. You come under Islamic code. Okay. Let's go to my favorite document. You already know where I'm going. Expatriation document. Let's remind y'all what the colonists said about your culture. Sir, there are strictly speaking no Moroccan laws relating to citizenship of Moorish subjects in Morocco. The fundamental laws of this non-Christian country are based entirely upon the Islamic code, no part of which treats of the subject of citizenship. So we cannot be citizens of any republic or anything like that. That's not our jurisdiction. We are the Moroccans who allowed them here. We are the landlords, they are the tenants. And if they want to call it what they want to call it, then they call it what they want to call it. That has nothing to do with us. That's their jurisdiction. As long as they're paying taxes and they abide by Moroccan laws, they can call their state of whatever they want to call it, but they've never called it a republic. It's not Georgia Republic. Man, we gotta get out of this worship crap and this fellowship crap and start really studying and reading and understanding things for what it really is and stop parroting these teachers. Let me start back over. I have the honor to inform Your Excellency that the department is in receipt of a telegram from the American Chargé d'Affaires at Tangiers, stating that the French diplomatic agent in that city, in the name of the French resident general, had requested of him a memorandum of pending and unsettled claims, understanding that this government would not be favorably inclined to recognize the French Protectorate until those cases were satisfactorily disposed of. And who are you to talk like that, right? You ain't got no power here. The American legation at Tangiers, see, here we go, has been instructed to submit to the proper French authorities a memorandum of all pending American claims in Morocco. American claims in Morocco. American claims in Morocco. So the Americans had a claim in Morocco while the Moroccans were asleep. So you have the Americans that are in Morocco. How can you be Moorish American or Moroccan American? America is in Morocco. It's that simple. Oh, my bad, the prophet didn't say that. Well, you don't know what the prophet said. It didn't say if you don't study international law, because his information was, yet again, I'll say it again, infiltrated and corrupted. And I beg to assure Your Excellency that a satisfactory solution of these cases would greatly aid this government in replying to your note of January 8th, 1913, containing the request of your government for the formal recognition of the French Protectorate in Morocco. So they were seeking, trying to get the United States to recognize the French Protectorate in Morocco, which they really don't have a choice because the Sultan had already recognized. Accept, etc. For the Secretary of State, Robert Lansing, right? So it was Robert Lansing speaking to the French ambassador. So now here comes the French ambassador responding back to the Secretary of State, June 10th, 1914. Mr. Secretary of State, my government, to which I did not fail to forward the contents of Your Excellency's notes of February 13 and April 30 last, about the doing away with the extraterritorial rights in the French zone of Morocco. They've been trying to get them to relinquish the extraterritorial jurisdiction in Morocco. So then you fast forward to 1952, the case between France and the United States, what did the ICJ said for the United States to do? Relinquish extraterritorial jurisdiction in Morocco. So the bill has been passed. The president hasn't signed it yet because the president is waiting for the time that's appropriate for them to relinquish, to sign off on that law, to make it law, to relinquish extraterritorial jurisdiction in Morocco. When is the time appropriate, Morris? I'm asking y'all. I'll wait for you to answer that. When is the time appropriate for Joe Biden to relinquish extraterritorial jurisdiction?
When a centralized, united Moroccan government is formed.
Yes or no? Think about that. Think about that, what you said, and give me a more accurate answer.
Okay.
Okay, let me give you a hint. Do we have to wait for the central government of Morocco to be reformed? Or can it be done
The government.
now? Go ahead, Marius.
3 branches of government.
Yeah. Well, the specific answer I'm looking for is now. Why now? Because yes, he may not relinquish it for California, but he can certainly relinquish it for AMPAG, AMPAM, AMPAG, Moru, New Mecca, DMT. So you may not do it for all of Morocco, but you certainly could do it for our Uti Bazidatis jurisdiction. Our borders, that's now international borders. Y'all understand? You see? So the time is now. And if they don't do it, this is where petitioning the International Court of Justice comes into play. This is why it's a guaranteed win, Morris. The United States is in a chokehold. It's a guaranteed win. The ICJ already told them to do so. So if we take them back to the ICJ with the same issue, guess what the ICJ gonna say? We already told you this back in 1952, United States. Judgment for the Moroccans, relinquish the jurisdiction. You see, it's that simple. Okay. Where was I? Extraterritorial rights in the French zone of Morocco and about certain claims of American citizens has just affirmed to me that it had promptly taken steps to bring about, under the most equitable conditions, a settlement of those claims. In regard to one of them, that of the vacuum, hold on, I went up too far. Come on. All right, in regards to one of them, that of the vacuum oil company, my government, which had never heard of it, wrote to Morocco to inquire about the grievances the concern might have the state as to the customs treatment it receives. General Lottie accordingly called upon the agent of the company for explanations. The answer was that he had not the slightest ground for complaint against the customs authorities. Well, if you guys forgot about the earlier read, it had to do, I forgot the guy's name, someone's property, someone encroached on somebody else's property. I don't want to go back to the other reading to find it, but that was a case that took place during the time when a foreign national's property was encroached upon when they built a highway. That highway, the construction of the highway basically encroached upon his property, and he got a favorable judgment from the courts in regards to that, but it never was settled. Okay. As for the other claims, the instructions sent by Your Excellency to the representative of the United States at Tangier have no doubt brought to your knowledge, with all the needful explanations, the facts from which those claims may have arisen. I beg leave in this connection to refer to the note I had the honor to address to Your Excellency on the 22nd Ultimo, which is April, in which, while answering the main points mentioned in your note of February 13, I laid stress on the importance attached by my government to the government of the United States, earliest possible accession to the request I had laid before you. I am informed by my government that Russia, Spain, and Norway have already renounced their extraterritorial rights by signing a declaration like that enclosed in my above mentioned note. So Russia, Spain, and Norway were punked by France. Well, I ain't gonna say punked, but France went in, and with the power that they gained from the French Protectorate or the Treaty of Fez, got Russia, Spain, and Norway to relinquish extraterritorial jurisdiction, and that's what they're trying to do with the United States here, right? Other accessions are momentarily expected. So they're expecting the United States to take care of these matters. Jusserand is the name of the, be pleased, Jusserand. That was the ambassador for France. So now the French Chargé d'Affaires. Oh, I'm sorry, hold up. Wait, I got that backwards. That was the United States. Let's go back up. No, I was right. So that was the French Protectorate to the French ambassador, I'm sorry, to the Secretary of State. So it was 2 consecutive letters. So now the French Chargé d'Affaires to the Secretary of State. So the ambassador, and then now the Chargé d'Affaires is coming at the United States. So back-to-back correspondences to the United States. Understood? I kind of messed that up a little bit. All right. Mr. Secretary of State, in the course of the negotiations for the suppression of consular courts, remember that consular court is Moroccan courts. Suppression of consular courts and the extinction of extraterritorial rights in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire, it was occasionally objected to the representative of the Republic that it was not possible for the powers to take any further responsibility in the fate of their Moorish proteges. So this is the second, a second letter, consecutive letter to the Secretary of State. Let me read this again. In the course of the negotiations for the suppression of consular courts and the extinction of extraterritorial rights in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire, it was occasionally objected to the representative of the Republic that it was not possible for the powers to take any further responsibility in the fate of their Moorish proteges. Look at the language. Of the Republic, that it was not possible for the powers. What powers? All the other signatory powers of the Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras. Russia, France, Russia, what was the other? Okay, so what was those 3 states that relinquished the jurisdiction? It was Russia, Spain, and Norway. So Russia, Spain, and Norway has Moorish proteges in their jurisdiction. It's not limited to the United States. All the signatory powers got Moorish proteges and Moorish subjects. To take any further responsibility in the fate of their Moorish proteges. There would seem to be some foundation for that feeling. In fact, under the provisions of Article 12 of the Franco-German Agreement of November 4th, 1911, whose full scope is given in the explanatory letter, the government of the Republic would certainly have the right, after the discontinuance of the consular courts, to ask that protection be done away with. The strict legal effect of this would be to place under native jurisdiction their proteges, under native jurisdiction, the proteges who, under the present system, are enjoying consular jurisdiction, but with a view to obviating the hardships that might thereby be brought upon the Moorish subjects, but with the view to obviating the hardships that might thereby be brought upon Black people, Negroes, Blacks, Colors, African Americans, and Moorish Americans, Moorish subjects. Thus deprived of protection, the government of the Republic is ready to declare them to be, as long as they live, under the jurisdiction of the French courts set up in the Protectorate. So the Protectorate is gone. Who has taken over the criminal and civil jurisdiction? United States, at least for the Moors here subjugated in America. This would place them, in this respect, on an equal footing with the person subject to the jurisdiction of the former protecting power, and not with the natives. You see? My government authorizes me to make make its intentions as to this known, unto this known to the federal government, being convinced that they are likely to remove any apprehension concerning its proteges, if after availing itself of the rights conferred upon it by the existing provisions, the government of the Republic should procure the abolition. I avail myself of this opportunity to enclose 3 copies of Louis Renault's preface to the codes and laws in force in the French Protectorate in Morocco, which brings forth the value and importance of the legislative work of the Protectorate. Which brings forth the value and importance of the legislative work of the Protectorate. It's all about legislation. It's not about literature. It's not about being some author. In order for you to have credibility, you're supposed to write books. No. Books are not law. You cannot enforce literature upon the colonists. Instead of writing books and pamphlets, creating websites and all these various forms of literature, we were supposed to enact legislation. We're supposed to learn how to write laws, or should I say, relearn how to write laws and legislation. And the most important legislation that we were supposed to learn how to write was our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. But people would say, no, the United States got a Constitution. We need to be enforcing that. I mean, yes, true, that Constitution wasn't written for Moors. However, our ancestors put it in place so that we can keep others at bay, the colonists at bay, from molesting us. So let me get this straight. We're supposed to remain subjugated without a constitution, enforce theirs to keep them at bay from us. So we're just keeping them at bay. Just subjugated people, keeping them at bay. This is the power that we think that the prophet brought to us. For us to remain subjugated and just keep them at bay. How about governing your own affairs? How about confessing your own? How about worshiping under your own vine and fig tree? This is ridiculous what I'm hearing from these Moors out here. They were supposed to enforce a constitution to keep them at bay, to not molest us while we do what? Just remain. Keep complaining about their fiat currency, keep complaining about their criminal and civil jurisdiction. How about you enact your own constitution? And once you enact your constitution, now you have a dispute between states. When that happens, what takes over? The treaties. What treaties? Moorish treaties. Now we got so much advantage over these people, over the colonists. But we won't have any advantage over them if we're utilizing their constitution to keep them at bay from molesting us. Really? It's absolutely insane and incompetent. Absolutely insane and incompetent. And they keep giving us pushback, but they're giving us pushback without the proper reference points. They're comparing apples to oranges. We're dealing with oranges, they're dealing with apples. We're dealing with international law, they're dealing with municipal law, which is a contradistinction to international law. And you wonder why a century later, we're in the same place. It's not so much so because of a lack of unity. It's because of a lack of knowledge of self, which is causing the identity crisis. If you don't know who you are, you're gonna have an identity crisis, and the identity crisis is gonna cause confusion and division and a lack of unity. No, I'm not Negro, I'm Black. No, I'm not Black, I'm African American. No, I'm not African American, I'm Moorish American. No, I'm not Moorish American, I'm more American, because they got a problem with ish. Like, it's ridiculous. Go do some research, find out that ish, the first definition for ish deals with nationality, i.e. Danish. So let me get this straight. People from Denmark can be Danish, but people from Morocco can't be Moorish? Stop it, Moors. Get out of your incompetent mindset and start studying and start understanding things as it really is versus what to you. It's ridiculous, man. It's frustrating. We got a lot of problems. We got an identity crisis. And we also have a study crisis because we don't like to study. We're lazy. We don't want to read anything. We don't want to look up things. We're just parroting what some Moorish teacher said and what we think Prophet Noble Jew Ali said. I'm sorry, y'all. This gets me. This, you know, the past couple of days I've been experiencing certain things from Moors, and it's just like, oh, it frustrates me. Showing as it does that the guarantees extended to all foreigners in Morocco, that paper ought to expedite adhesion to the new system on the part of the few powers that have not yet relinquished the exercise of consular jurisdiction. Be pleased. So now this is R. Klaus, right? So now here comes the French Chargé d'Affaires to the Secretary of State again, a third correspondence. So they just beating them in the face with correspondences. By a letter dated February 13th last, Mr. Bassett Moore made known to the embassy the federal government's intentions respecting the acceptance of the jurisdiction of the new courts instituted by us in Morocco. So the French Republic instituted a new court. Why did they do that? Because the Sultan team that told them to do that. That's this right here. Judicial. Judicial reforms to establish new courts in Morocco. See how that lines up? I mean, it all just lines up. I don't know what to tell you. It lines up. Let's read this again. By a letter dated February 13 last, Mr. Bassett Moore made known to the embassy the federal government's intentions respecting the acceptance of the jurisdiction of the new courts instituted by us, who is us, the French government, in Morocco for persons subject to American jurisdiction. What else you want me to say? Why are you Moorish American? Because you're descendant of Morocco, naturalized in American jurisdiction. Y'all see this? J. Jermaine Bey didn't write that. I didn't write this. Akil didn't write this. The French wrote this. This is the conversations that they're having about us behind the scenes while we're marching and praying and going to church and paying tithes and taxes and offerings and passing around offering plates, and the preacher pork chop, Reverend Pork Chop up there with his towel, just sweating, wiping the sweat off his forehead because he up there acting a damn fool on the pew, screaming and hollering, knowing damn well who these people are. This is what we got to deal with our own. So the new courts was instituted in Morocco for persons subject to American jurisdiction. Well, then what's the other jurisdiction? Morocco. But Morocco had acquiesced. Morocco is under protections. At the same time, Mr. Bassett Moore expressed a strong desire to arrive at settlement of various questions affecting American interest in the Sharifian Empire. America is in Morocco, the Sharifian Empire. They're in our land. So how are we Americans? Do I care what the Webster's dictionary say? No, it's a trick bag. That's not based on well-settled principles. That's not legislation. And with all due respect, whether he said it or not, the prophet's literature is not legislation either, and it's not law. The supreme law is treaties, and they all supersede the prophet. But the prophet knew about those treaties, and he spoke about those treaties, but that's what was corrupted. Anything that you see in his works that brings you into the mindset of being an American is a trick bag. You're not American, and the prophet knew that. How these French people here, this is 1913, this is during the time of the prophet. How they know that and the prophet don't know this? And he's supposed to be the prophet? Either he was or he wasn't. So if he don't know these things, then he wasn't the prophet. Period. But if he was a prophet, then he knew these things. This is during the time of the prophet, this conversation that's being had right here. He was establishing the More Science Temple of America during this time. So they're talking about these things behind the scenes while the prophet is establishing the More Science Temple of America. Same time. And he don't know about the French Protectorate. He don't know about the Act of Algeciras. He doesn't know about the Treaty of Fez. Really, you don't tell me he didn't know about any of that. This is how you prove that the prophet's works was corrupted. The resident Commissioner General of the French Republic, to whom the State Department's note was forwarded by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has returned to Mr. Viviani an answer, the substance of which I have the honor to communicate to you, with the exception of two clearly defined cases, Vacuum Oil Company and the Benetuil case, which will be fully explained hereinafter. The federal government formulates, but does not specify, reservations or demands of a purely general character against the protectorate government. There is no question about the federal government being, as much as any other, warranted in watching over the economic rights and interests of Morocco. Y'all might want to go back and read and study this document, which as put by Mr. Bassett Moore, are safeguarded by the treaties concluded between the foreign powers and the Sharifian Empire. Listen, man, these are the reference points. You can't argue these reference points. In order to argue these reference points, you have to go into legislation and international law to prove something that's contradictory to what's being said here. And you can't do it. This is why you're limited to only utilizing the United States codes and their constitution and all this crap to make your little videos as pushback to what the Moroccan states are doing. It's incompetent, absolutely incompetent. I cannot believe, in hindsight, that I actually bought a nationality card from that website. But we live when we learn. But it is equally true that the protectorate government is bent on respecting to the fullest extent in favor of Americans. But it is equally true that the protectorate government is bent on respecting to the fullest extent in favor of Americans as well as all other foreign citizens or subjects, the principle of economic equality, because that's their treaty rights. This is based in treaty rights. The Americans have the right to economic equality, do commerce. But what are they supposed to do in exchange for that right? Pay taxes. So you rent out my house. I gave you a right to live in my house. What do you do in exchange? Pay rent. Okay, so you're in my house. I'm giving you authority. I'm giving you the right to do commerce. What do they do in exchange? Pay taxes. It's just that simple. The principle being once more evoked, the reservations or claims put forth by the federal government are so general in their character that from the fact that the importance of American interest and the number of persons lying under American jurisdiction appear to be out of proportion to the set of reservations and objections offered. The question arises whether Mr. Bassett Moore's letter of February 13, 1914 is not aiming after all, and while the federal government expresses itself in favor of the reforms to reopen the question of the very principle of the protectorate regulation powers. As a matter of fact, it does not seem possible to maintain the protest that have been made against the Protectorate government upon careful examination of every one of the questions presented. One, as regards the contemplated material law in cases of contraband of arms, Treaty of the Act of Algeciras, Chapter 2. The matter having been settled by dropping the subject and need not be brought up anew. 2, the federal government's statement about protection leads one to believe that the meaning and intentions have been misunderstood. Indeed, it never was, therefore, our intentions to do away with protection, but we meant merely to stop its improper use through a revision jointly with a delegate of every legation concerned. Provision, furthermore, for such a revision was made in the Franco-German treaty to which the government of the United States gave its adhesion. It is important, however, to take notice of Mr. Bassett Moore's assertion that the choice of the American protege rests ultimately with the government of the United States. What is the American protege? The Moroccan proteges. Protected person of high level. Obama was an American protege, but Snoop Doggy Dogg is an American subject. Or you can say Moorish protege or Moorish subject. You can also say Moroccan protege versus Moroccan subjects. However, even though Obama is of a higher degree, which makes him a protege, guess what? He's still a subject. It's just a subject who's been bumped up a few degrees into the degree of proteges, which is under the protections of the government because you're working for the government, which means you're well paid and well protected, right? If Snoop Doggy Dogg might have been a bad example because he may still be a protege as well. He took an oath. More than likely, we don't know that to be the case, but let's assume he took an oath through the music industry in Hollywood or whatever to keep Moors subjugated. He's protected. Now, he may or may not know the ramifications and the history behind it, which you probably don't. But guess who does? Obama does. The choice of the American proteges rests ultimately with the government of the United States, for the right to choose can only be exercised within the limits wherein it conforms to the treaties of the provisions of which the Moxon may remind the powers concerned in order to obtain a return to the enforcement of those conventions. What conventions are they talking about? The Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras. Those are two conventions, multilateral conventions. If the powers would forego, in principle, their consular jurisdiction, we might per contra take up such an enforcement in as literal as spirit as possible, and to that end come back to a bilateral revision as provided in the Franco-German Treaty. 3, the remarks offered in regard to the original circular of November 1st, 1912, laying down rules for the purchase of land appear to have been prompted by an incomplete study of the subject on the part of the Washington government. On the one hand, the consent of the government referred to in Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, in Article 60 of the Act of Algeciras, and again mentioned in the regulation of November 11, 1912, does not, of course, apply to any but those parts where is requisite. That is to say, without the 10-kilometer zone around the ports and the 2-kilometer zone allotted to Azemmour. So when you go back and all right, we're studying here, so we got to do it. I already had it pulled up. So what are we talking about here? So it's telling us to refer to Article 11 of the Madrid Convention. Okay, let's see what it says. Oops. Somebody, can you please read Article 11 of the Madrid Convention?
I'll read it. The right to hold property is recognized in Morocco as belonging to all foreigners. The purchase of property must take place with the previous consent of the government, and the title of such property shall be subject to the forms prescribed by the laws of the country.
Thank you very much. So the foreigners were giving the right to purchase property. Now it's supposed to have consent from the government. Okay, let's go further. Let's see what Article 60 says. Same person, please read it when I get to it. Let's see, Control F. You can get to it pretty quickly. There we go. Go ahead and read that, sister.
In accordance with the right granted by Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, foreigners shall have the right to acquire property throughout the Sharifan Empire, and His Majesty the Sultan shall issue to his administrative and judicial officers such instructions as may be necessary for them not to refuse the registration of deeds without lawful cause. Subsequent transfers either by deeds between living parties or by death shall continue without hindrance. In the ports open to commerce and within a radius of 10 kilometers around such ports, His Majesty the Sultan generally, and without it being necessary henceforth for foreign subjects to obtain a special permission for each purchase of property, now grants the consent required by Article 11 of the Madrid Convention. At Qasr el Khyber, Arzila, Azamor, and eventually in other towns of the coast or the interior, the general authorization stated above is likewise granted to foreigners, but only for purchasers within a radius of 2 kilometers around those towns. Wherever foreigners may have acquired property, they will be permitted to erect buildings in compliance with the regulations and usage. Before authorizing the execution of deeds for transferring property, the Qadi will have to satisfy himself of the validity of the title and the conformity of the Mohammedan law. The Muezzin shall designate in each city and district specified in this article the Qadi who shall have charge of such verification.
Bingo.
Article 1.
No, you're good. No, you're good. We just wanted to do Article 60.
Okay, Islam.
Thank you, sister. Excellent read. Before authorizing the execution of deeds for transferring property, the Qadi will have to satisfy himself of the validity of the title and in conformity to the Mohammedan law. The Qadi is a very powerful individual in the state. He also has judicial powers. Can the IRS lock you up for not paying taxes, etc.? Yeah, so can the Qadi. So, as you see here, they have the permission to erect buildings and hold property and all that good stuff, right? But look at what it says up here. Where was it? I didn't want to stop you when you were going. It says, in accordance with the right granted by Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, foreigners shall have the right to acquire property throughout the Sharifian Empire, and His Majesty, the Sultan, shall issue, okay, that's what I was looking at, issue throughout the Sharifian Empire, and His Majesty, the Sultan shall, His Majesty, the Sultan shall issue to his administrative and judicial officers such instructions as may be necessary for them not to refuse the registration of deeds. Administrative and judicial. Administrative, see, literature and vernacular. I'm trying to, come on. Why is it that these PDFs don't allow an easy highlight? Okay, here we go. See that there? Administrative and judicial. So more, let me ask y'all a question. What are they referring to when they talk about administrative? That's your governments, your 3 branches of government. No, your governments, your 3 branches of government. Your 2 branches of government. What is the 3rd branch? Judicial. Administrative and judicial is government. Administrative deals with the legislative branch and the executive branch. Those two branches deal with the administration of the state. In our Constitution, the Sierra has general oversight of the administrative processes of the state. The Wazir, or the Prime Minister, the head of state, has the full administration of the state. So the Seyaraha, or the Dalil Aziz, and Matriarchal Council, the legislators, keep the head of state, the Prime Minister, the Wazir al-Rais, in check, and the Wazir keeps the Seyaraha in check. And then the judicial branch is separate, which now makes up the administrative and judicial reforms that we were supposed to institute, which means that we were supposed to establish governments. That's off the subject matter. But the point is, the point here, though, is to highlight what was being said here. On the one hand, the consent of the government referred to in Article 11 of the Madrid Convention. So we went over that. You've seen how they have the right to establish, to hold property. In Article 60 of the Act of Algeciras, and again mentioned in the regulations of November 1st, 1912. So in the Treaty of Madrid, somebody trying to say something? Okay, maybe you need to mute. So in the Treaty of Madrid, Article 11, they were given rights, and then Article 60 took it further. And as you see, they talked about, I mean, look at what they're talking about here. Look at what okay, we already read it. Let's read this again now that we've read Article 11 and Article 60. On the one hand, the consent of the government referred to in Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, the consent of what government? The Moroccan government. Article 11 of the Madrid Convention and Article 60 of the Act of Algeciras, and again mentioned in the regulations of November 1st, 1912, does not, of course, apply to any but those parts where such consent is requisite. That is to say, without the 10-kilometer zone around the ports and the 2-kilometer zone allotted to Azamir. So why is it that they are so well versed in our Moorish treaties? And at the same time, during this time, we're asleep, don't know nothing about them. There was only one person that knew about it. I ain't gonna say the only one person, but I'm saying the only person that was willing to share that information with us at the time, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because he wasn't the only one that knew about this. He was just the only one who had the nerves to bring it out to the people, but he was ordained to do so, right, by Allah, and under as a government authority, because a prophet is a government title. That's not a religious title. That's a government title, which means that he was an officer of the empire. And my reference point for that, as it relates to what a prophet is the Rudder and Sextant Handbook, which deals with the Moorish government titles. Prophet is a title under the Sultan. On the other hand, the circular of November 1st, 1912 cannot apply to the Tangier territory, specifically referred to in the American Memorandum. So they couldn't do that in Tangier, in the Tangier territory, right? Since Tangier and its purlieus do not come under the regulations decreed in the Protectorate. As to the Habus, so in case you guys don't know, anyone who may not know, some of you I'm sure you do, but some may not, Habu property is the ancient Moorish buildings that were built in ancient times that now are being occupied by the colonists. So the Kremlin that Vladimir Putin operate out of in Russia, that's a Habu property. Conversely, the Capitol building that Governor Kent operates out of, that's a Habu property. These properties were built by our ancestors, and the colonists right now are operating out of it. That's what a Habu property is. As to the Habu or government land in the Gish lands, the circular of November 1912 merely repeated in their respect pre-existing principles that are enforced in every state. That is to say, the principles that some land is public domain and inalienable. In again bringing forward that principle, the Resident General merely availed himself of the power to issue regulations granted by the Franco-German Treaty, right? And that, in answer to the fault found with servitude zones, servitude zones. What is it? Is Hakeem? Are you on the line, Hakeem? I don't know if Hakeem is on the line. We went over servitude zones before and all. In fact, we went over servitude zones when we went over this doc. This is the second time we're going over this document. Servitude zone, I believe, has something to do with the slavery zone, right? The areas where people were being enslaved. In answer to the fault found with servitude zones, we are justified in holding that all purchases of land are permitted by the Act of Algeciras. Article 60. You see how they're invoking treaties? So what's going to happen when we start doing that, Moors? Think about it. They're talking about the treaties and invoking the treaties against each other. Like you got two colonists going against each other based on Moorish treaties. And the Moors themselves, they marching and praying. This is fascinating. This is actually some fascinating stuff. Subject to the obligation placed on the purchaser to conform to the laws and usages of the country. Now the Sharifian decrees the Sharifian decrees creating zones of military servitude are precisely to be numbered among local laws as the aforesaid Act of Algeciras could not presume to prevent on every subject whatsoever laws and usages or include in that phase only those that existed in 1906 during the time of the Act of Algeciras, right? Mr. Bassett Moore's letter further on asserts that the records of land titles, which must furnish the Cadiz with the means of verifying the validity of the contemplated transactions, are very incomplete because there ain't no Cadiz, right? Are very incomplete. The conclusion drawn by Mr. Moore from his purely gratuitous assertion would, if accepted, have but one result: a presumption of wrongs based on those previously committed. Furthermore, when looking into the lawlessness of pending transactions, y'all heard that. Furthermore, when looking into the lawfulness, I thought it said lawlessness, lawfulness of pending transactions, the local authorities do not confine their investigation to an inspection of the said records. 5, as regards Article 63 of the Act of Algeciras, the Protectorate government never showed any intentions to evade its operation, and still more unfounded is the assertion that the Sultan gave notice to the diplomatic corps of measures aimed at the recovery of property of the class referred to in the aforesaid article. Such a notice never was served. The only measures taken had for their sole object to prevention for the future of the wrongs, the settlement of which for the past must be effected in accordance with the procedure directed by the Act of Algeciras. The Act of Algeciras, Moors, that's the key. It's a decolonization document. They're scared of that document, but they had to acquiesce to that treaty or that contract if they wanted to have rights to do commerce in Morocco, also to have rights to life, liberty, and property. What's the reference points? President Roosevelt's proclamation that's attached to the Treaty of the Act of Algeciras of 1906. We went over that before. All right. What was I? Okay, number 6. As for the customs grievances formulated by the American government, not the Moxin. So you got the American government, and then you got the Sharifian authorities or the Moxin, the Moroccan governments, the Moorish government. We're not the same. We're not Moorish Americans. 2 separate jurisdictions, Moors. It's very important for us to get this through our heads. Oh, we've got reference points in books. This is what Moors tell me. Okay, but what does it say in the treaty? I don't care what some author said. How do you know that author hasn't taken an oath to mislead the people in his literature? Why are we standing out square on what an author said? Tell me what the treaty says. This is ridiculous. We really are minorities. We really are minorities, or we have been. Many of us have chosen between the laws of the laws of the empire. We have chosen between the entire laws of the empire, and many of us on this line are working on that as well. All of us that are on this line, which is 43 Moors, we're coming into competency. If you're interested in this information and this information moves you, that means that you were ordained to do this. That means that something was put in your spirit to do this. You are one of the few Moors who came in with their eyes wide open, seeing and knowing that's going to put the old Moors in the back because old dogs can't learn new tricks. And that has nothing to do with age. Because you've got 30-year-old Moorish Americans who won't let go of the fact that they're Moorish Americans. And then you have 70-year-old former Moorish Americans who decided to choose between entire submission of the laws of the empire because they had the eyes to see and the ears to hear. This is the only case presented in the memorandum of February 13 has been investigated at Casablanca by our consul. He reports that the agent of the vacuum oil company at Casablanca told him he had not the slightest ground for complaint against the customs authorities, but the memorandum of the Charge d'Affaires of the United States at Tangier, hereinafter discussed, having explained that the difficulties under consideration had occurred at Safi, and not at Casablanca. General Lodi referred the question to the office of the controller of the debt of Tangier, which will furnish all the data which the settlement of this customs difficulty may be taken up at the earliest possible date. Number 7, as regards the American claims against the Moroccan, y'all heard that? So the Americans had a claim against the Moroccan. So when you look at Moroccan, you're looking at Moorish. Anything dealing with Moroccan, that's Moorish government. So you got the American claims against the Moorish government. 2 different jurisdictions, 2 different peoples, 2 different nations, 2 different parties to the contract. Again, this is why you cannot be a Moorish American. Moors. The government of the United States may be assured that they will be examined in the same light as all the claims of persons under foreign jurisdiction. Those already passed upon by the Commission of 1910 will be paid in toto. Will be paid in toto. Does anybody know what toto is? I'm assuming, well, clearly it's some sort of a currency. There's actually a currency called toto. To the beneficiaries out of the funds of the loan that has just been voted. When we institute financial and economic reforms, maybe we should name our currency Toto. Let me stop. This is a little jokey joke. Number 8, as for the Benetul case, our agency at Tangier gives me the following information confirmed by Mr. Philip, our consul at Tangier. It agrees with the information supplied by the Washington government. Can somebody tell me who is Mr. Philip?
He's a government. He's part of the government.
I can't highlight this. Say that again, brother.
I said he's part of the government. He's part of the. He's part of the system.
Yep, but specifically speaking, okay, come down here, right here, Mr. Philip, Charge d'Affaires to Mr. Root, Secretary of State, August 3rd, 1906, American Legation, Mr. Philip, Hoffman Philip. He's the guy that was talking about the expatriation document and the subjugation of the Moors and what makes us ipso jure Moorish subjects and what would get us out of that jurisdiction or of that status. He tells you everything you need to know. This right here, page 460, 459 and 460 is the answers to the test. That's who Mr. Philip is. So they brought him up in this conversation here, Mr. Philip. Our consul at Tangier, he was a consul at Tangier. Well, charge d'affaires. It agrees with, it says here consul, but he was a charge d'affaires during it when he was when he was drafting it, the expatriation document, or at least his portion of the expatriation document. It's a big document. His section is 459 or 460. It agrees with the information supplied by the Washington government. Jacob Benatuli, an American Semsar, having obtained a judgment from the Shura about 8 years ago in a real estate suit against several foreigners, of whom one, Mr. Fries, was French, did not choose to apply to our consular court for an executor of the Cadiz judgment. You see, the legations of France and America. So you had your French legation and your American legation, all of which was stationed at the diplomatic body in Tangier. This is something that has to be reiterated because it became the United Nations. And so the same way you have member states, 193 member states, during the time of the diplomatic body, it was legations. Then the diplomatic body became the League of Nations in 1920. Then the League of Nations became the United Nations. They're all successors of the diplomatic body in Tangier under Moroccan law. This is the reference points and the proof that the United Nations is based in Moroccan law, and they answer to us as competent government officials and diplomats and officers of a state, not as Negroes, Blacks, Colors, Moorish Americans, and a bunch of individuals who just running around like a chicken with their heads cut off, not knowing who's who, what's what, who they are, what's they don't know nothing. Suffering from a identity crisis. The legations of France and America tried but failed to bring about a friendly settlement of the Cadiz award by a payment by Mr. Fries. The loser of an indemnity to be determined by umpires, but our fellow citizen arguing that the judgment against him had been obtained by fraud, would not listen to any settlement. Inasmuch, however, as the land in dispute lies within the Tangier zone, the American government cannot condition the relinquishment of its extraterritorial rights upon its settlement of this case, which by reason of its situs does not lie under the jurisdiction of the protectorate authorities, right? American government, in order to arrive at a more precise knowledge, if possible, of what is asked of us, our agency at Tangier has been instructed to apply to the Charge d'Affaires of the United States for such information as he possessed about the American claims the government of the United States wished to have settled before recognizing our courts in Morocco. The American government to recognize their courts in Morocco, right? American government. The reason why I keep pointing that out is because we keep saying that we're American and that we're Moorish American, and we're not. These documents is proving that. You're hearing the difference in the two. Mr. Blake's memorandum under date of March 7th, sent in reply to our Charge d'Affaires comprises 14 claims, but 7 of these may be even now stricken out. The first 5, including the Benatul case, belong in Tangier, and the other 2 in El Khazar and Larak. They therefore do not come by reason of their situs under the jurisdiction of the Protectorate and cannot be brought into a discussion of the relinquishing of extraterritorial rights in the French zone. As to the other 7 claims, they are all routine cases, and most of them of a judicial nature. They do not offer, either in their charter or their importance, a class of litigation which may afford ground to the United States for future, or should I say for further postponing the relinquishment of its extraterritorial jurisdiction and privileges. Privileges So when the Moors talk about we got rights and not privileges, we know that privileges can be taken away. Is that right or wrong? Can privileges be taken away? Is that something that we understand in the Moorish movement? Please, someone give me an answer.
Yes.
Mhm. That's all they have is privilege. Which means when we come in, we can remove those privileges. That's simple.
Because they're only temporarily.
There you go. There you go. The resident general is, at any rate, even now making it his duty to set on foot an examination of those cases and investigations by the Protectorate local authorities respectively concerned therein. But these cases apparently are not such as to warrant opposition as a matter of principle to relinquishing the American extraterritorial rights. American extraterritorial rights. American extraterritorial rights. So the Americans have extraterritorial rights. Americans. We are not the Americans. We were naturalized to become an American. And we have bought into the design. Since the resident general is even now ready to examine and settle those cases in the most conciliatory manner. And don't get me wrong, I was a proud American. Oh, I'm a Moorish American. I used to do that. I used to be of that same mindset until I saw the reference points that proved otherwise, and I had to course correct. I'm not gonna roll with something because somebody said it, because the prophet said so. I mean, okay, is the prophet human? Yes, he's a prophet, but let's see, he did say that, and he is human, which means there's a possibility that he could have possibly made a mistake if he even said that. That's the difference between worship and scholarship, or fellowship and scholarship, either or. I deemed it expedient to relate herein above the explanations furnished by the Commissioner of the Republic, which answers every point in Mr. Bassett Moore's memorandum. These explanations meet every claim and objection of the federal government, both in satisfying inquiries bearing on specific points and in carrying promises as to minor points that could not yet but will be settled. Finally, the report throws as full a light as may be desired on some other topics that do not seem to have been correctly understood or interpreted. The willingness of the federal government to recognize the Protectorate's regulation powers cannot be doubted by the embassy or by the French government. I am convinced that Your Excellency will find in the foregoing explanations all the palliations you may wish for, and I have no doubt that you will, as has already been done by most of the other powers, agree to forego the benefits of extraterritoriality in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire and accept to place persons subject to American jurisdiction under that of our courts. You see how you talking to him? Aware of the friendly and reciprocal goodwill which always presides over the settlement of such questions between our two countries, I cannot but remind once more, in conclusion, Your Excellency, as Mr. Jusserand did before this in his note of May, April, and June 10 last, of the high value my government would attach to the federal government's early accession to our request laid before it on August 29, 1913. Be pleased, etc. Clause. So now finally the Secretary of State for the United States responds back. So they've been harassing the United States about about relinquishing extraterritorial jurisdiction. So you see so the French have been harassing them to relinquish it. Well, who was supposed to be doing that? We were the ones that were supposed to do that. So the French is operating on our behalf, not necessarily in our favor, because it was based in greed. They wanted to hold on to the taxes. Because if they had been doing things the right way, there would have been a cooperation between the French Republic and the Sharifian authorities, i.e. the Moors. We were supposed to be working together. But they decided to not wake us up and train us up as they were supposed to do, according to the treaty. And instead they operated on their own. And the Sultan didn't even check them. He let them slide with that. You should have shut them down with that. Like, hold up, that's not part of the agreement. You're not completing the full aspects of the agreement. You're supposed to wake them up and train them up. Nobody woke us up. In fact, the United States took us further down through there. They made it worse with the Negro leaders and teachers and preachers and Moorish American leaders and teachers and preachers. Keeping in mind that preachers, I'm saying preachers because it's synonymous with grand sheiks. And there's not disrespect to all grand sheiks. We got 2 grand sheiks in our state, but we know the grand sheiks that we're talking about. The converso Moors grand sheiks, what you would call a spiritual leader, starting with Colonel C. Kirkman Bey. He's the main one. Everybody else fall under him. Y'all don't forget that name. There's a tomb out there for him. He's dead. The tomb, like when you look it up, it literally says it. See, Colonel C. Kirkman Bey. That's once you're a colonel, you will always be a colonel. You maintain your rank for whatever military branch that you have been a part of for the rest of your life, especially as a commissioned officer. So here comes the Secretary of State to the French Chargé d'Affaires, Department of State, Washington, July 24th, 1914. Sir, I beg to acknowledge the receipt of your note of July 16 in reply to that of the department under date. Somebody outside with their cars, there is a lot. Oh, Lord, come on. Can y'all hear that in the background? That's going to be annoying in the call. Can you guys hear that squealing in the background? I hope not.
Yes.
Yes, can hear it.
No,
You don't hear it?
no, I don't hear it.
No, I don't hear it.
It's going away. Oh my goodness. It's
Yeah,
one of those.
it stopped now.
Yeah, it's when your belt is squealing type of sound, and it's annoying, and it's like right there. Sir, I beg to acknowledge the receipt of your note of July 16 in reply to that of the department under date of February 13, 1914, relative to the recognition by the government of the United States of the French Protectorate in Morocco, and the desire of this government for the settlement of certain questions affecting American citizens and American protégés and their rights in that country. What country? Morocco. The American government has assured the government of the French Republic of its favorable disposition towards the reform which the French Protectorate proposes, and will give the remarks contained in your note referred to above careful consideration. Accept, etc. For the Secretary of State, William Phillips. So that was William Phillips, right? So then here comes the French ambassador to the Secretary of State on November 4th, 1914. Was the Secretary of State, in continuation of previous communications, the last being the letter of July 16 last from Chargé d'Affaires of France, relative to the claims in Morocco preferred by the federal government, which it thought had better be settled before extraterritorial rights were relinquished. I have the honor to inform Your Excellency that the result of the latest inquiries prescribed by my government concerning those claims has just been made known to me, and I deem it my duty to impart it to you as follows. First, in regards to the Werschel case, it appears from the investigation that the claim formulated in his memorandum of May 7th, last by the representative of the United States at Tangier, that it was settled as early as the following month of June. The deeds of sale were straightened out at that time. On the other hand, as to Mr. Werschel's being given possession by his common law native vendor. The case is one that involves Mr. Werschel and his vendor on one side and the German agent on the other side. Until lately, it was for the native from whom Mr. Werschel held his rights to sue for the execution of the judgment rendered against his opponent, the German agent, before the consular court of that nationality at Casablanca, and the protectorate authorities were quite ready to facilitate, when the time came, the formalities required to enable the vendor, provided, of course, that he had previously secured an executor of the appellate judgment to give possession to Mr. Werschel. The war declared by Germany on France, having brought German proteges. Oh, y'all see that, right? What did I just say that made me say, oh? What did I just read?
Protege.
Complete that statement.
The German protege.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Why is that something important to recognize?
Because what it's basically saying is that they were in the same position that a Moor's protege is in.
In American jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yes. And guess why? I cannot see my screen. I cannot see who's talking. I just know voices when I hear them. And I'm talking to Adrisi, Adila Adrisi Bay, formerly known as.
Yes, you are.
How you doing, matriarch?
I am doing well.
I'm glad to see you on the call. I ain't talked to you in a couple of days. Been busy.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So you say, so the war declared by Germany on France having brought German proteges under the operation of the common law. The execution of the judgment is now a matter for the local authority alone, to which the party concerned need only apply for a prompt and final settlement of his case. Second, in regard to the vacuum oil company's claim touching some land it purchased from one Ben Soda, in which it is said the Moorish authorities, imagine that. Let's read that again. Second, in regard to the vacuum oil company's claim touching some land it purchased from one Ben Soda, in which it is said the Moorish authorities were not allowed to be sold because of the land being Habu property. That's very interesting. Because who were the people operating this particular Moorish government? Because the Moors were asleep, right? Placeholders. There's a book called The Passing of the Sharifian Empire. The passing of the Sharifian Empire, not meaning the death of the Sharifian Empire, but meaning that the empire and its several authorities, governmental authorities, have been passed on to other nationalities. So it's like we just say, here, you run our government. I'm tired. I don't want to. We've been doing this since time immemorial. Time never was when man was not. We've been running these governments for thousands and thousands of years. I'm tired. Here you go, run it for us, right? And then we ended up subjugated by giving up the pen. This is why it's very important that our Constitution lays out the principles of our three branches of government and who can and who cannot hold that pen. And the only people that can hold the pen, according to our Constitution and structure of our government, are those of matrilineal status, meaning that your mother would have to be a Moor, period. You want to say it's discrimination? We say it's legacy. And the maintenance of the maintenance of our legacy, the maintenance of our authority, the maintenance of our consanguinity, the maintenance of our culture, the maintenance of our nationality, the maintenance of who we as to who we are as a people. Malcolm X pointed out, or should I say Il Malik Shabazz pointed out that the Constitution, the United States Constitution had us as 3/5 of human being. Can somebody answer what makes us 3/5 of human being as opposed to a whole being? What makes us 3/5 of human being? Can somebody answer that, please?
Islam,
Islam,
mind, body, and spirit.
mind, body, and spirit. So what's the other two principles that's missing?
Nationality and divine creed.
Islam. I knew somebody would be able to answer that.
Could you repeat that again?
Mind, body, spirit. Nationality, divine creed.
Islam.
Who was that answered that question, good brother? Please, could you introduce yourself?
Jordan Bay from Dempsey.
Islam, Jordan Bay from Dempsey. Dempsey got some sharp moments there. So yes, so what makes us a human being is the fact that we have the mind, body, and spirit, but what we're lacking and we're missing our nationality and divine creed. Well, if you're missing your nationality, then that means you're missing what? Can somebody answer that?
You're missing your rights. You're missing who you are.
Not the answer I'm looking for. Something more specific.
State.
What was that?
Yes, state.
There you go. Your government. Your government is what recognizes your nationality. There is no nationality without a government. If you're subjugated, you lost your nationality, which means you lost your government. That's how we became 3/5 of human beings, by losing our governments. And then by default, we lost our nationality, and then therefore our divine creed. So Negroes, blacks, and colors are 3/5 of human beings. Moorish subjects as a whole are 3/5 of human beings. Now you may say that the Moorish Americans are 4/5 of human beings because at least they have proclaimed or they recognize their divine creed. They also recognize their nationality. But the problem with that is that it's not, the status hasn't changed. Because the only way to change your status is by establishing your government and have your government, and your government will recognize and enforce your nationality. Right? And that's the bottom line, Morris. Let's hit it again. Second, in regard to the vacuum oil company's claim touching some land it purchased from one Ben Sauda, in which it is said the Moorish authorities will not allow to be sold because of the land being Habu property. The legation of the United States, the American legation, declared in a memorandum on the case that it could not consider any settlement bearing on Habu property to be applicable to its citizens and proteges before the forms required by Article 63 of the Act of Algeciras had been complied with, right? But in the opinion of the government of the Republic, the treaties of 1880 and 1906, as the Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras, see, this is the reason why we stand on these treaties, because they talk about those treaties. So obviously there's something to these treaties that we need to know. There's hundreds of Moorish treaties, but which ones are the more germane to our condition and our situation and our salvation? The Treaty of Madrid of 1880 and the Act of Algeciras of 1906. That's why we focus on those, as well as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. And then all the subsequent conventions and acts and agreements, constructive agreements set forth by the United Nations, such as Resolution 1514, the rights of indigenous peoples, etc. But in the opinion of the government of the Republic, the treaties of 1880 and 1906 could not bar the Sharifian government from amending or perfecting thereafter the laws and regulations existing at the time of the signature of those treaties. Article 63 cited by the legation of the United States can hardly be invoked in this particular case, since it deals with the examination of titles to Habu property occupied under certain conditions by foreigners in 1906, right? And the present case is that of land purchased in 1913 by the Vacuum Oil Company, upon which there seems to lie certain Habu rights. Okay. All right. I hear you. So now let's see what 63 says. Can somebody read 63 for me, please?
Really quickly, was the other time is officially 9:45.
Lord have mercy, time flies. Oh, Lord. Okay. We're almost finished, I think, anyway. Somebody read 63 for me, please.
The Sharifian delegates. Hold on 1 second, my phone. Phone's tripping. Sorry, Mose. Delegates have stated that Habu property or certain state properties, notably buildings of the magazine occupied.
Moxon. Yeah, Moxon. Go ahead.
Moxon occupied American Journal of National Law.
No. Go back. Read. Start over. Start over. Let's make it fluid so you can see exactly what's being said here. Go ahead. 63.
The Sharifian delegates have stated that the Habu property or certain state properties, notably buildings of the Mazin occupied at a rental of 6%, are held by persons subject to foreign jurisdictions without regular title or by virtues of contracts subject to revision. The conference desires of remedy this state of affairs, charges the diplomatic body at Tangier to solve these two questions.
Tangier.
Tangiers. To solve these two questions equally in accord with the special commissioner whom his Sharifian majesty may be pleased to delegate to that effect.
Okay.
Part.
No, that's it. That's it. Article 63, only Article 63. So let's go over it again. The Sharifian delegates have stated that Habu property or certain state property, notably buildings of the Moxon. Who is the Moxon? The Moorish government. It's our buildings. They're talking about our buildings, Moors. So guess what they got to do if they're going to occupy our buildings? Pay 6%. Period. They're supposed to be paying 6%. So right now, Governor Kemp is supposed to be paying 6% for occupying the Capitol building that he's occupying right now. Those are Habu property. At a rental rate, at a rental of 6%, are held by persons subject to foreign jurisdiction without regular title or by virtue of contract subject to revision. The conference, desirous of remedying this state of affairs, charges the diplomatic body at Tangier. Remember, I was telling y'all about the diplomatic body at Tangier, and in there you have these missions from the foreign states, the foreign powers, as legations. So you have your American legation, German legation, British legation, Russian legation, Norwegian legation, etc., which then became the United Nations. To solve these two questions equitable in accord with the special commissioner whom his Sharifian majesty may be pleased to designate to the effect. Back to the read. Here we are. Where was I? So it says here, second, in regard to the vacuum oil company's claim touching some land it purchased from one Ben Sauda, in which it is said the Moorish authorities, which is the Moxon, will not allow to be sold because of the land being Habu property. The legation of the United States declared in a memorandum on the case that it could not consider any settlement bearing a Habu property to be applicable to its citizens and proteges before the forms required by Article 63 of the Act of Algeciras has been complied with, right? But in the opinion of the government of the Republic, the treaties of 1880 and 1906 could not bar the Sharifian government from amending or perfecting thereafter the laws and regulations existing at the time of the signature of those treaties. Article 63, cited by the legation of the United States, can hardly be invoked in this particular case, since it deals with the examination of titles to Habu property occupied under certain conditions, 6% rental rate. That's the certain conditions. They ought to pay 6% for holding those properties by foreigners in 1906, and the present case is that of land purchased in 1913 by the Vacuum Oil Company, upon which there seems to lie certain Habu rights. So it's up to us to demand those 6% payments, not no one else, right? Not even France, but France was given the authority to do so, and they are doing so. But the real authority comes from the Moxen, the Sharifian authorities, the Moorish government, i.e. the Moroccan people, as competent officers of their state, not as a bunch of people who are dealing with an identity crisis and don't have no governments. All they have is temples, churches, organizations, associations, and websites. This is for high-level Moors more. This is for diplomats and government officials and officers of your state who have ratified, deposited, and promulgated a constitution operating through 3 branches of government. Legislation, period. Not literature and book writings and fake IDs and fake judicial orders and all this crap. Name corrections and wow. It can hardly be doubted under the circumstances that the case and dispute is that of a land transaction, which if it does partially or wholly concern the Habu administration, must be settled with proper regard to the existing regulations governing Habu cases. The Protectorate government has nevertheless asked the Habu department, see, like I didn't even know there was a Habu department. So when we establish as we continue going forward with the establishment of our authority, Sharifian authority, we must have a Habu department, and a Habu department must deal with everyone operating out of our Habu property. You see, this is how we're supposed to be thinking. This is the way we're supposed to be operating. Writing legislation, not writing books. Books. I'm gonna do with a book. Legislation is free. Like I can pull up legislation for free. I got to buy a book, and the book may not tell me what I need to know. It doesn't tell me what I need to know. It's based in your interpretation of whatever the hell you read from somebody else. But international law, treaties, law in and of itself, legislation, well settled principles. The Protectorate government has nevertheless asked the Habu department to institute a thorough investigation of the case, and the legation of the United States has been so informed. See? So this has nothing to do with the United States. They were informed about it, but it's outside of their jurisdiction. They have no political interest in Morocco. As to the various other questions, most of them of very little account: loss of an ox in 1911, the Benetul case, which can only be settled in accordance with the existing law, theft, the existence of which is not admitted, supposed to have been committed to the detriment of the American citizen. A money changer by trade, bearing the name of Muhammad bin Ali. Is that a Moor, or is that an American? See, they even gave, when you look at a name like Muhammad bin Ali, you automatically know that that's Moor. Bags of sugar, 10 in number, lost at Larache, that is to say in the Spanish zone, etc. The acting agent and consul general of France at Tangier has opened negotiations with the representative of the United States in that city with a view to reaching the earliest possible friendly settlement of these few questions. The government of the Republic would fain believe that on the strength of the foregoing statements, which added to those are sufficient proof of the sincere readiness of the authorities to bring without delay all these cases to a legitimate termination. The government of the United States will kindly, as it has repeatedly and lastly on July 24th, intimated to the embassy, make a favorable answer to the request I have had the honor to present as early as last year, and to the effect that the government of the United States agrees, as has already been done by several European governments, to the abrogation, so far as it is concerned, of the capitulations in Morocco, wherever the government of the Republic has organized French courts. Be pleased, Jurassad again. So Chargé Blake to the Secretary of State. I think this is the last one. An American legation. Let's verify who, let's see. Okay, so Chargé Blake to the Secretary of State. So the last few correspondences is France. So the French ambassador to the Secretary of State. And now the Chargé Blake to the Secretary of State. This is December 20th, 1914. British Chargé d'Affaires informs me that owing to Turkish intervention in European war, British government has proclaimed a protectorate over Egypt. This is why he said, Hoffman Philip, an expatriation document. This doesn't seem, should I increase it? That's fine. Let me see where it says it at. Okay, right here. This is why he said right here, residence in foreign parts does not affect the nationality of Moorish subjects, and the Moorish government has no means of protecting its subjects permanently residing in other countries, with the exception of a so-called Moorish consul at Gibraltar and a Moorish agent at Cairo, Egypt. Hoffman Philip. All right, that's why he said that. So back over here, we're talking about, what was that? The protectorate over Egypt. So even Egypt has a protectorate over it. A full agreement having been rapidly, see this, the whole world has been colonized by the European powers through treaties, by the pale sultans who were placeholders, who were trustees and administrators of our empire. And they still gave us authority back. That's the ancestors at work, Moors. A full agreement having been rapidly reached between France, Spain, and Great Britain concerning the international regime of Tangier, Great Britain contests to recognize the French Protectorate in Morocco in exchange for recognition of British Protectorate in Egypt. So Egypt is under protection by the British, which means Egypt has been colonized by Great Britain. British legation here will be immediately suppressed, and the British chargé will be appointed diplomatic agent and consul general. The question of the suppression of the capitulations in the two countries is reserved for ulterior discussions and forms no part of the present understanding. Italian, Spanish, and our own are the only legations remaining. So the only remaining legations was the Italian, the Spanish, and the French legation. You see? So y'all starting to see now what's being said, what's being explained about this legation thing with the diplomatic body in Tangier. You got to understand that principle, because when you understand that, then you can clearly see how the United Nations answer to us. Period. They have spooked us out. They have turned the United Nations into the boogeyman. Oh, it's the Illuminati and the Rothschilds set it up, and the Rockefellers set it up to take over the world and enslave all of humanity. BS. Absolute BS, Moors. Get out of that mindset and get out of it quick, because they answer to you. And it's based in international peace and security. It has absolutely nothing to do with enslaving humanity. It's the exact opposite. The hell wrong with these Moors, man? Excuse my language. The question of the suppression of the capitulation, let me see. It is possible that the international statutes of Tangier may shortly be presented for the consideration of the powers, but their applications will likely be deferred until the ending of the war, as otherwise the international character of the community would entitle the expelled representatives of Germany and Austria-Hungary to recognize technicalities, which, by the way, Austria-Hungary was another one of the signatory powers of the Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras. In exchange for compensations elsewhere, all the powers, who are all the powers? Germany, Austria-Hungary, Great Britain, United States, France, Russia, Norway, etc., Spain. In exchange for compensations elsewhere, all the powers, with the exception of the United States, have now recognized the French Protectorate. So all of them have recognized the French Protectorate except for the United States. The United States don't want to give it up. They want to hold on to these Moors. I see no reason why we would depart from our position that recognition of the French Protectorate and the suppression of the American legation must be deferred until the settlement of our outstanding cases has been discussed. This point of view is well understood and seems to be admitted by the French local authorities as being both logical and reasonable. Blake, Islam. And that ends the correspondence between France and the United States. And I think that we have seen now that the French Republic were doing our job. And what gave them the authority to do our job was the Treaty of Fez of 1912, which was the French Protectorate in Morocco. And this is where you will find, this flag. The merchant ensign. This flag represents the French Protectorate. Islam. I yield with that for questions, comments, and concerns about what we've read thus far. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Islam, Mo, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the blessings of the insight and an awakening.
The pleasure is mine. Who was I speaking with, good brother?
Isaiah Joyner Bay,
Isaiah Joyner Bay. What territory are you in, good brother?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, are you in communication with Aziz Hano Bay?
Islam.
Okay, good. So you guys are working on Sukra. How do you pronounce it?
Huh?
How do you pronounce your state?
Charlotte.
No. The state that you in. Are you, if you're in communication,
it's just like it's Skaru, like Maru, Skaru.
Say it again, brother. You're kind of low and far. Can you repeat that again?
Skaru.
Oh,
Skaru.
Skaru.
No, Skaru. Skaru. Yes, Skaru.
Skaru State Republic, y'all, in the building. Working on their constitution. Great post, by the way, brother Hano Bay. I love your post. It's just awesome. It's showing that you're studying and increasing your erudition as it relates to international law. Islam Moors.
Islam.
That's beautiful. Hano, have you found a matriarch to represent the legislative branch yet?
Yes.
Oh, you did. Wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So then that means we could expect the public inauguration sometime soon, huh?
Absolutely. We moving. I ain't playing no games.
That's what I'm talking about, Moors. That's what I'm talking about.
Time to go. It's time to go.
Well, we went over the reference points just now, and we see what we're supposed to do. We see our obligation. We see our authority. We see that they're supposed to be paying us 6% for occupying the Habu property. We see that they can hold property, yes, but the Qadi, which is a tax deed assessor, must satisfy himself of the validity of the deed in conformity with Mohammedan law. We're seeing these things. We're seeing that the French and the Americans are invoking treaty provisions as it relates to the Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras. So if they're standing their square on our Moorish treaties, what should we be doing? Standing our square on our own treaties. So why are we talking about enforcing their constitution? Why are we talking about their USC codes? Why are we talking about their UCCs, etc.? We need to be talking about international law and these treaties. Period. I yield for the last few questions before we close out. Okay, seems like there's no questions. I know this is a lot to swallow. Please go back and do your own research and read it yourself. This is the document here.
Isaiah, I wanted to point out, you know, when you were speaking earlier, you spoke about the difference in the words and like,
Speak up, brother.
jurisdiction.
Hold on, brother. You sound kind of far and away.
Hold up, just a second.
Yeah. Y'all write down this
Can you
title
hear
and
me
look
now?
it up. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, what I was saying was earlier when you was reading, you spoke about the words. The jurisdiction is in the words. You can like identify the words. You can identify the jurisdiction. So when he spoke, he said interest in Morocco. Immediately, I know interest is like affiliated with a right based on international law. It has nothing to do with the USC code. It has nothing to do with a IRS anything. Like this is something totally different. So if you're reading it and it's talking about ratification, that had nothing to do with getting a nationality card or making you a live birth certificate. Those are totally two different processes. Those are processes which you can consider the matrix. And these are processes for organic international law. With that, I yield.
Thank you, brother. Excellent point of interest. We have been conditioned to create our own IDs, create our own certificate of live birth, change our own names. So if I do that, so let's say I went and bought a machine and created my own ID, and then I copy and pasted one of both of these two frivolous documents off of RV Bay, right? And then established or created my own certificate of live birth. What did I just do? I acted as if I was a government, because your government issues all that to you. So what are we? Just a bunch of individual governments? We're just people who are pretending to be individual three branches of government? Do you see the incompetence in that? That's absolutely ridiculous. And this is the reason why Moors are ending up locked up. Because, okay, so you're your own government. Okay, fine. So now when you stand before the court, you're the one that's in the court. So your whole government is in the court. So what other government official is there available to come to your aid? He doesn't exist because you are the government. You see how silly this is? We're doing things all the way. We've been doing things so wrong. And we have to, these are growing pains. We go from point A to point B to point C all the way to Z, right? And it's order out of chaos. So we've been chaotic thus far up to this point. Now the WRC and these several Moroccan states are reigning in the order. So now we're going from a chaos into a status of order, law and order. And the law and order stems from Moroccan law based on the treaty provisions that has been enacted over 100 years ago that we had no idea about until now. So lots of credit and honors and flowers go to the good brother, J. Jermaine Bay, the chief judge of Consular Court of Elodia Morris Parade of Monte, Colorado, who shed light on these principles. And he will forever be appreciated for that, because up until then, we definitely were moving in an incompetent way. But now as we examine these exact principles and reference points that's been presented to us, we cannot, if we have a basic intelligence, we cannot help but to recognize the truth and the facts in these reference points that now gives us the confidence and the power to move forward without worrying about doing anything wrong or making anything up. It's all in black and white, but it's based in well-settled principles that's coming from international law, our Morris treaties, and even American legislation, right? Because even they say these things. You go back and you look at Public Law 856, they tell you where they get their jurisdiction from over Moorish subjects. They get it from the treaties. They said it to you. They said it to us. And so now we want to stand our square on AA 222141, but it's actually a trick bag because it's putting us in jail, because it's really saying that they have jurisdiction over you based on these specific treaties. So how do you get out of their jurisdiction? Well, you examine those same treaties that they say that they use to have jurisdiction over you. Specifically, the Treaty of Madrid, Article 15, Paragraph 1. Any subject of Morocco who shall be now. Let's close out with that. Let's close out with that. And then perhaps that's what we should close out with every class, is Article 15. Maybe we should make that a practice. Article 15. Any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country. Remember, we recognize that Germany had subjects. That's why it says any in a foreign country, meaning that it's not limited to the United States. Moors have been naturalized and subjugated all across Morocco, which includes Germany, Great Britain, Spain, France, Russia, Norway, Austria-Hungary, etc. Any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country and who shall return to Morocco shall, after having remained for a length of time equal to that which shall have been regularly necessary for him to obtain such naturalization, choose between entire submission to the laws of the empire and the obligation to quit Morocco, unless it shall be proved that his naturalization in a foreign country was obtained with the consent of the government of Morocco, period. And if you don't do that, no problems. The choice is yours. You have the right to self-determination, but this is what's going to happen to you. Foreign naturalization heretofore, going forward, required by subjects of Morocco, according to the rules established by the laws of each country, shall continue to them as regard all its effects without any restriction. So if you want to remain as an American, you must deal with the laws of the country without any restriction. Otherwise, your choice would be to choose between entire submission and go back to the Empire of Morocco under your own jurisdiction, where you have your actual rights and your nationality is recognized, and now you can stand your square on a separate jurisdiction when you tell the United States you have no jurisdiction over me, because now you can say AMPAG has jurisdiction over me, AMPAM has jurisdiction over me, Sakaru State Republic has jurisdiction over me, Maru State Republic has jurisdiction over me, and these are the emanating documents that show and prove what I'm saying. This is not just my verbal decree. Here's my state ID. Here's my certificate of live birth. Here's the Circle 7. Here's the Circle 7 of Facts, which contains the Constitution, ratified and deposited. These are all the emanating documents that show and prove that you have no jurisdiction over me, colonists. As a matter of fact, you need to get in contact with Joe Biden, because y'all need to be signing Public Law 856 to relinquish extraterritorial jurisdiction in Morocco, since you didn't do so when France told you to do so. And then subsequently, the ICJ told you to do so in 1952. This is how you come at them. You don't come at them telling them you don't have no jurisdiction, but then you're upholding and invoking their laws. You invoke the treaty rights and the treaty laws. Even what was said in the ICJ. I bet you they'll deal with you differently then when you come at them with that level of competency. Islam, I yield with that. With that, we'll close out. Peace, love, and prosperity to everybody. It was a great call. I'm glad that everybody was on. Think do it again next Sunday. Perhaps we'll be going over the Azir Regional Council with prosperity again. And may the blessings of Allah be upon you all. Islam, Morris.
Islam.
Islam. Islam.
So we can find all these documents on Google, right? All of the treaties. Go to Google.
Also go on our website at ampag.org and go under treaties, and then you can click on that link and it'll display all those treaties.
Okay, did you leave the link for your website on Telegram at all?
I'll put it on there as soon as we close out.
Thank you so much, Islam. Peace and love.
You're welcome, Matriarch. Peace and love. Islam, everybody.
Islam, love and honor.
Any final questions, though? I don't want to rush anyone off if somebody has a final question.
Hey, Islam, brother. This is your good brother, Ras Bey. Good job as always, brother.
My brother, how you doing, brother?
I'm great, my brother. I just want to say great job as always, brother.
I thank you
Keep
so
up
much.
good work.
I look forward to you and Nasik, bro.
And tell brother Hakeem, thank you for his you know, what he sent to us as far as the first drafts and stuff. Tell him we appreciate that, what he did.
You will, my brother.
All
Islam.
right. Honor
Peace and love,
family, honor kindred, peace and love.
Peace and love, brother. Islam.